Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the studio. So tonight we are going to paint this koi fish here. I've been painting a couple of these. They are super fun to paint. I think you all will like it. It's something that everybody kind of likes, I think. And here's the picture I've got. I have done a drawing on my paper already. My paper is Strathmore 500 series paper. It comes in a pack pre-cut on here. I'm going to be using today my Holbein watercolors. Here they are. This was a pack of 24. Here are the colors that are in that pack, and I'm using this for a couple of reasons. The vermilion color that is here is really nice. It's close to this orange that's on these koi. I could mix it with a little bit of Crimson Lake or maybe Rose Madder and bring that color down a little bit, but that orange color is fantastic. And also this one has a black in it. It's a black that I don't typically have in any of my other sets, so I've got that. And of course we need black for the black spots on this fish. Other than that, I could use any of the sets of paints that I have, but we're going to use that. The brushes, I'm going to use a combination of my Zen Art brushes and my silver black velvet brushes. And if I need to, I'll probably go into an old Grumbacher rigger brush. I could tell you what size it is, but it used to be listed there and it's broken off. I think with that, I've got to turn on the paint cam so you can see what I'm doing over there. There it is. I've got it in a little bit of a different position. Here it is. Let's make sure you can see all of the colors. A little bit different position today. I've got water up there if you see me constantly going up there to get something. Let's see. I'm going to grab, I'm going to start with the silver black velvet number 8. I'm going to get that wet. And what I want to do is just start by painting the sides of this fish where it curls around. Those sides where it comes down are a slightly different color. You can see on here they're darker, they're bluer to reflect the background that this fish is on. So we're going to paint that in first of all, and then we'll add on top of that. I think to do that, I'm going to use this cobalt blue. And if I need to darken this up just a little bit, I'm going to switch over and put in a little bit of this, which is next to it, which is Prussian blue. I'm going to just start by, I've got just a tiny bit of color on my brush. I'm going to start by wetting this fish all the way down past his gill. Right over here, we can paint right over his eye because this fish's eye is black. There we go. I hope you can see that. Now I'm going to come in and add some stronger color to that. There we go. And I could have done this the other way. I could have put a line of paint down here and then blended it out. That would have been just as good as doing it this way. This is just a little different way to do it. And I still want to grab on the side and blend that in. Whoop, just a little bit. There we go. I don't mind if we see a little bit of that color as it comes up onto his back, onto this guy's back. But what I don't want is a whole lot of it coming up to see. And I'm just cleaning my brush here. Every time I go down there, go up there, just cleaning my brush a little bit and tamping it off on an old rag. There we go. I think that looks pretty good. Now we've got part of this guy done already, and we haven't really done anything. We've just added a tiny bit of color. But by the time we're done, that's really going to help us out. It's really going to give us some dimension and shape to this fish. And I'm just looking to see where I might want to add just a little bit more of this. I'm going to do a little bit on this side of his head and up to his gill over here. All right. Add a little bit of that color. I think that's all we are going to need. We don't need too much. And his head is going to be mostly orange anyway, so that's going to blend in quite a bit. All right, so now I obviously can't go back over the body of this fish here because that paint is wet. So what I'm going to do, is just dab in a little bit more paint right there. Seems my water pushed my paint just a little bit further than I thought it was going to. And give it a little bit just like that and let it flow back out. It'll be like I've never done anything with it before. It's going to be perfect. Okay, so as I'm looking at this fish, here's what I want to do. Hello, Fun Stuff 24. How are you this evening? I'm going to take, as I look at this picture, the ribs on this guy's fins are really dark. They're much darker than the background back here, and then they come out and have a little bit of white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up my darkest blue on this palette, which happens to be Prussian blue. It's not that dark, but it's a bit darker. I'm going to mix this up with this brush, but I'm not going to use this brush. I'm going to clean this off. Doing good, thanks. That's fantastic. Welcome to the studio this evening. Thanks for stopping by for a little painting. All right, I'm going to grab my old rigger brush. I'm going to get a big puddle of this. And let's see, I'm going to do this one first. I need to turn this a little bit, but I think I can turn this picture so you can see just the same. What I want to do is put quite a bit of color in here and draw that out kind of like this. These big long veins in that, or ribs, or not exactly sure what they're called. But inside this fin, I'm just going to grab a few of those and pull those out. There we go. And I think I really don't need to do too much more on this one, just where it's going to be thickest back here. I lost a bristle in there. I can see it. I don't know if I can get to it. We just want to pull those out just a little bit, kind of following the contour of the shape that's drawn there. I'm going to flip him around this way. I think I can move my picture around like that. And we can do the same thing on this side. And just draw out this. There it's going. It's looking good. It's going to, by the time we get, this was going to allow us to, I should say it this way, this is going to allow us, if we want to just paint blue over the top of this, and then we can come back in and add some white highlights in at the end if we want to, and it'll help us make our fins look a lot more like our reference photo than not. There we go. We've got those two fins on there. I think those are a good start on those. The top is almost dry. But I'm going to do this last fin here too. This one seems to be, I got too much paint down there, just a bit easier as you don't have this big blob of blue so much right in there. And these just come out really nicely. There's some fine, gentle lines there. You can add a little bit of mass to these at the base, but I don't want to do too much to those. We don't need to do too much. Oops, come out further. There we go. All right, that's the base of our fins right there. Let's see what else we can do. This guy's going to be pretty easy to do, actually, because when we look at it, once we get the shadowing or the basic shape of this guy's body down, we're gonna enhance that with the different colors that we put on it, and you'll see he'll really come to life. We'll put a big background on it. But what I want to do first is I'm going to add these orange colors all through here. And I'm just going to grab my vermilion. Let me get a big brush so I can mix that pretty quickly. Add some water to that vermilion. I actually haven't used my Holbein paint set over here in quite a while, and it's kind of fun to get these old colors back out to see how they react and how they flow and how they're different and how they're the same than the normal paints that I'm using. Can we ask watercolor questions? Of course, fun stuff. Ask away. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can. Just realize that sometimes I stop even talking while I'm painting, so there might be a bit of a delay in answering your questions. But if you shoot, go ahead. And until you get a question down there, or I guess more importantly, until I can read that there's a question down there, I'm just going to forge ahead. And one thing I do like to do when I'm painting these koi is I like to look at the colors not as though they go straight across the page in like a linear form, but I like to try to bend them around. To me, that means when I put a color on, I don't put it across, I put kind of a curve on it. So if it goes down the side of this fish, there's a definite curve on it. Let's see. He's got some stuff right here up to his gills. The other thing about doing this is that you don't want to put this on in like a regular shape, no big blocks. See, I'm just going back and forth and back and forth and dropping in this color. And by doing this, it's going to look as though these were individual scales that are getting this color on them, instead of just making a solid blob. It gives it more motion or more energy or something. There we go. And I've just got to fill this shape in. This spot comes down to his head. I want to do this orange first, because of course the black that's going to go on top is much darker, much more opaque, and it'll take on the top of this much better. Let's see, this is coming down. He's got quite a bit. I'm going to leave a white spot in there. I don't like to leave a spot inside any of these spots that I've painted, but you can leave some little fingers that go up in there. Let's see, this comes all the way down here. Oh, I think I'll bring it down. Oh, that seems far enough for him on that spot. I'm going to give him a couple of more back here. I'm going to actually give him a little extra one that he doesn't have. Uh-oh, I just looked up and I saw that you put a question. If you just give me a second. So right here's a good example of not painting straight. You see how this mass of color, it kind of curves down a little bit. It's that little curve that's going to help to enhance the shape that you see in this fish's body. Without that, if you just put an orange mass, or a colored mass anyways, right on this guy, it's just going to kind of look like a blob of color there. And we don't want it just to be a blob. We do want a blob, but we want it to be kind of a special blob. Let's see if I can't do it here. There we go. I guess I don't know if I'm explaining that as well as I could. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for a second. Let me answer a question. Let's see. I was under the impression that once a layer was dry, it would be disturbed by painting another layer. Is that normal that I use too much water in my background? You could have had the paint on a bit thick, but there are paints that are staining paints. Typically your reds, the vermilion, the rose madder, crimson lake, those will stain more. The blues, typically you can push them around a little bit more. But you should, if you're using a good quality paint, you should be able to let most of them dry, then go back over it again and put on another layer so that you get layer upon layer upon layer, provided that first layer has come completely to a bone dry dryness, bone dry dryness. If it dries completely, you should have no problem with going over it if you're using professional quality paints. Some student quality paints, you can't quite go over it as easily. It just doesn't allow you to because of some of the fillers that are in there. So you might have some issue with that, but for the most part, the artist quality paints they're all good enough that if they come to a full dry, then not that you can't get them off, but they're difficult to lift off the page again. Let's use them Grumbacher Academy. Okay, so there are some of the Academy lines that, like I said, kind of sit on the top and don't sink in. So that may have caused some of that. I don't know exactly what color you were using. Not that it would matter because I'm not exactly what all of the Grumbacher colors do. So it kind of works out. But yeah, it's possible. It's possible that your background was too thick, and it's possible that your paints just had some kind of filler in them. Hang on one second. I've got, this, right? Which is a grayscale and value finder. And I have tried to, let's see, I'll do this. This is from an upcoming video. I did a test last night with a slightly different fish. And if you look, my fish itself, the colors are, the value is, well, most of them are value 1, 2, or 3. Right, let me get this down here where you can see it a little bit better. Right, the black is way up here in value 1. This orange looks to me to be value 3. But on the top of this scale is where all of the colors in the main body of my fish are at. And in the background, I typically left it really light. So we're talking like value 8, maybe value 9 in a lot of places. And I don't know, what your background was on yours, but you might want to consider leaving that background really light, because what it does is it allows everything in the foreground to come up when there's just a tiny bit of color back there. So, oops, as I pull this out, right? If you do something that is, if everything is value 1, if you look at it, it's just going to seem really flat. But if you do paint a value 2 next to a value 9, like on this, then that value 2 is going to pop off the page that little bit more. So you might want to try toning down your background values. And again, I say that not knowing what your picture was or what you were trying to accomplish or anything, but it might be something that you want to look into. Okay, I'm going to get back to this, and I'm looking at this guy. My orange is not quite dry yet. If I hold it up like this, you can see it's got a little bit of shimmer to it still. Let's see. I'm trying to read what's going on over here. Got a little bit going on. We got some extra people. Connie, Shirley. Who else is here? Didn't I read somebody else? Hello, Connie and Shirley. Okay. I'm going to, while I'm waiting for my orange to dry here, I'm going to get I'm going to go back to I'm going to grab a number 4 brush here. Thanks. You didn't get sidetracked. I got sidetracked. And I'm fine with that, because you know what? That's the fun of making the live video on Saturday night, is that I can take a little time and answer some questions. I can't do that if I just have my equipment going on a Tuesday and I want to make a video. I don't get any of that, so I like being sidetracked. So thank you for your question. You didn't do anything wrong. It's perfect. I am going to take a little bit of rose madder here, just a very small amount, and I'm going to mix in a little bit of black with that right over here. Really thin that out. Hello, Connie. You're certainly welcome. It's my pleasure to be sharing any art with you. I want to thin this way down, have this a nice warm color, because I'm looking at our picture here. Let's see if I can do this so we can only look at one. And he's actually got a spot on his back that's kind of pinkish, and I'm not going to paint that on his back, but I want some of that to come through in his fins here. So I'm going to grab a couple of these and just pull them out really long like that. And I don't need to do too much. I just need to give the indication that they're there a little bit. And I actually think I'm going to go back into my Prussian blue, and I'm going to add a couple of little lines on his fins back here, just to keep, they're not really on this picture, but I just want to keep the consistency that we had in these fins. And I've got a couple of lines that I can add up here really lightly. And as long as we're waiting for our orange to dry, there we go. I don't want to do too much. I really don't want to do too much with these fins back here, given that they're pretty white. But a little bit of color here and there I think is really going to help us out. All right, we're still wet everywhere around here. What we're going to move on to then is putting in our background. Oh, Mr. C. Tate, you made it. Great, thank you for stopping by. I'm going to mix up a little bit of ultramarine blue, a nice warm blue. You can see me mixing there in the corner. And I'm going to mix with that a little bit of our cobalt blue, and that is going to be the color of our background. And again, I'm going to try to keep it pretty light and pretty watery. And I'm going to let this blend way out. This is how I'm going to do this. A brush that has almost, well, it's a little easier with this big mop brush because it holds so much water. I'm going to take I'm going to put the color in, put it next to our fish, maybe a little bit more than that. I want that color to be just a bit different than that fish. I don't want it to be exactly the same. And then as I move away from the fish, I want to clean that brush, get almost all my water off of it, and drag it. And then it's going to be a nice, smooth transition all the way. Put a little water down. And again, you don't have to do this background this way. You could put this down dry and come on a little bit more. When you put the water down, you need a little bit more color with it when you put water down first. I don't even know what I was saying. This is just the background I have chosen to do with this one. It's nice and it's going to smooth out. It's going to provide a nice warm backdrop surrounding our fish here. And what I'm actually going to do before everything gets too dry is I'm going to drop a little shadow in there too. I think I'm going to do it on this side of him primarily. So when I get over there, we're going to put that on. All right, let's see what we got here. Again, I'm just going to drop that paint on and then pull it out. A lot of water on my brush. Not so much that I get sloppy, but enough that there's enough there that it's going to allow that water to pull straight out. And what I don't want, I don't know if you saw, I shouldn't have touched it. I should have said it before. There was like a line right here. And I don't want a line, especially by his tail, which is so delicate and see-through, right? We're going to come back and add onto that tail, I think, in a little bit. And now I have to flip this. Excuse me for just a second. Okay, so we're almost dry there. This is what I want to do. Give me some of this good. This is just straight Prussian blue. There we go. There's my shadow, and I'm just going to let the paper do what it wants to do with that shadow, but it got to about the right consistency. I needed to do something with it. There we go. Nice. Now this is, I should say, the ultramarines in this set, the cobalts in this set of paints, in this Holbein set of paints, I don't think are quite up to snuff. They don't seem quite as nice as my M.Graham paints. As I love the blues that M.Graham has. But these are fine. They will be fine for what we're doing. They just, I don't know, they just don't seem to quite have the depth that the M.Graham paints have. I don't know if everybody caught it at the beginning. All right, I can flip this back around now. These are Holbein paints. This is exactly the set of 24. I bought this set of 24, well, I would say 2 years ago. Maybe, and I used it quite a bit the first year I had it. And I don't know why I stopped. But I did, and went back to using my M.Graham paints. I guess maybe I just like the M.Graham one so much. There we go. Now we've got a little bit of shadow on this guy on that top side. And let's see. Oh, lots of questions. Let me let that dry, and I'll answer a couple of questions here if I can. I remember when I subscribed, there were only 500 followers. That's right, Mr. C. Tate. That's right. You've been a long time. And I know 7,000 subscribers. It's to me, 7,000 is a crazy number. I know I look at some people and they've got 200,000. I don't know how you get 200,000 people to follow you, but 7,000 for me is a huge number. I'm so thankful that all of you guys are willing to watch me paint and listen to what I have to say. Does the lower quality paper pill up when you're working watercolors? Yes. So you're using Cants on, I'm assuming it's Cants on XL paper. And Cants on will take the first layer of paint very well, or reasonably well anyways. And every subsequent layer that you put on just kind of makes the paper a bit gummy. And I don't know why that is. I don't know how that is. But Cants on XL paper, while it's cheap, it's not. I've used some. I bought some a while ago. I still have some, and I don't think I'm going to be finishing with it. There are other papers you can buy that are in that same price range that I think are probably better than the Cants on XL paper. Yeah, and especially if you ever try to rub something out with that Cants on XL paper. Right, I've got a couple of stiffer brushes that I use for stuff like that. Here's a University Series Winsor Newton brush. It's an artificial brush. It's pretty stiff. And sometimes I'll use these. In fact, I've cut the end of this one to make it exactly what I want. But I'll use these to rub and get color out. And on the Cants on XL, it kind of just like digs a hole. It's, yeah, not the best paper in the world. That must be the paper I'm cheap, and I don't want to buy more expensive paper so I get better. That is the double-edged sword. You probably won't get a whole lot better if you're staying on the Cants on XL. But you don't want to do it until you get better. I would say just try out a couple of other manufacturers of paper. You might find one you like better. I know there are ones that work better than the Cants on XL in that same price range. Like I said, you'll be able to find something in there. I've had better luck with Strathmore, cheap paper-wise. Arches is super nice, but Arches is fantastic, but it's pricey. And who said it? Shirley? Did you say it, Shirley? About the Strathmore? This watercolor paper is much better. I don't want to set anything down here. Let me move this away. This watercolor paper is much better than the Cants on XL. It's not much more expensive. Oh, well, look at there. There's my logo. My masthead. It's not much more expensive, but it is much better paper. You can find that on sale sometimes. And somebody mentioned B paper. B paper on Amazon is very cheap. It's cotton, all cotton paper. It's got a nice feel to it. It handles water pretty well. The only thing you can't do is get this super wet because it's thin. It says it's 140-pound paper, just like the Strathmore paper, but the Strathmore paper is like 3 or 4 times as thick as this paper. But if you don't drench your paper in water, this will work really well. And you can even tape it down to a board if you needed to. That would help you with that. Let's see. It was Fun Stuff who mentioned the B paper. There you go. B makes good cheap paper. I used some masking fluid on it. Pulled the paper up in layers and holes. I don't know anything about masking fluid, unfortunately. I used it once about 10 years ago, and it tore my paper up just like you said yours did, and I have never gone back to use it since. And I don't know that I've missed it a whole lot. The one thing I do if I need to make sure I have a white highlight is, ta-da, right here, a white gel pen. I can't use it for big areas, but for small areas, the white gel pen works out really well. Okay, I think my orange is dry enough in places. We're going to go ahead and see if we can't get some dark colors on here. I'm going to drop a little on this side. The side of this guy's a little light over here. We don't have a whole lot of color on that side, so I'm going to give him a little bit of color back here. The color looks a little light. And we'll come around his tail. Also, I should say the other reason I'm doing this is I think I had a little too much blue on there and I wanted to cover it up. And what better color to cover up blue with than black? It works great. And then same thing as before, just down to the edge of this guy, just a little bumpy fashion. There we go. Just let the tip of that brush bounce on there. Connie, you haven't had a problem with Cants on so far. Well, that's fantastic. I hope you don't, but I have a sinking suspicion that at some point you're going to run into a problem. It's just, it's not. I guess it depends a lot upon the style of watercolors that you're doing too. If you're a little rough with your paper, you've got to stay away from the Cants on. The Strathmore is like bulletproof. For years and years, that was my go-to paper. You could scrub on that all day and you won't have too many problems. But the Strathmore paper the Cants on paper, if you start to scrub it at all, it will just kind of fall away. Oh, Mr. Cite, if you leave it on too long, I don't think that's what the problem was. I never thought about that. Don't leave masking fluid on too long. I guess I could see how that would do it. All right, so I've just dropped on a few shapes here. We all learn from our mistakes. Amen to that. And if you're like me, you've made so many mistakes that you hopefully have learned quite a bit. Some days I feel like I've learned a bit. Some days I don't feel like I've learned much of any. Oh, my favorite is Fabriano. You know what? I've used some Fabriano Artistico paper, and it seemed to me to be just as good as the Arches paper, but that was a very small sample size. I wouldn't say I know enough about Fabriano to recommend it to anybody. Okay, I'm going to watch this. I've got a little nostril I got to put in right there, and I've got to paint his eye. I've dropped down to a number 2 brush here. Give him a little line above that eye. There we go. Just a little line, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix up. I didn't quite. My background really faded a lot more than I thought it was going to. That's okay. I'm going to mix up a little bit of white here, and I'm going to use this almost straight. I'm going to draw just these little barbels here. I could just as easily have used my white gel pen, but since I've got the palette that's got my white paint in it, I thought I'd use that. Okay, so now what I want to do, really the last little bit that I feel like I have to do on this guy, I feel like I'm pushing this up a little too far. You can't see all of this fish. Something like fun stuff, something like this would take you many hours to do. You could just put this video on in replay and do the whole thing right with me. It would take you, where are we at now? It would take you 41 minutes. How awesome would that be? I'm sure you're going to get better. I'm sure you're going to get a lot better. I've no doubt. Let's see, I'm thinking about how I want to do this. What I want to do is come back in. Let me move this off to the side for a minute. And our fins are so thin and delicate out here that you see our color kind of comes on top of them. So what I want to do is grab a little bit of that color. It's mostly, I got a little bit of black left in there. Let me get that out. Mostly ultramarine, a little bit of that cobalt blue. And I'm going to have to try to do this a little bit without, you know what, let's do it this way. I can do it this way. All right, let's do this. Let's re-wet this. And then let's drop some of this color in up here. Now we still have the hard line. This might actually work out nicely. We still have the hard line, the tide line from where our background went in, so we know exactly where the end of that fin is. But by putting this on and letting this come straight towards the fish, now we should get a nice gradient there, and we should get to something similar to this. Maybe not exactly that, but should be similar to that. And if you even wanted to darken that end up just a wee bit more, you could. But I think that's going to be the best way to handle this one. And I'm going to dry my brush, or wet my brush, and mostly dry it. Just pull out. I don't want that water to creep up there too far. I'm going to try to do the same thing here. And you can see, or maybe you can see just barely, that the paint underneath, where I've gotten it just that little bit wet, just re-wetted itself just a little bit and bled a tiny little bit. I don't think it's enough that I'm going to worry all that much about it. You know what? These ones here are so thin, I think we can just go over those with a light layer of this paint. We don't need to bother to make these thinner. There's one. There's two. Now they kind of look more see-through. They look a little better to me. And there's a little bit of light on here, a little bit of white. Still, I'm okay with that. Maybe that shows a little bit of a highlight there. And it does kind of darken up the blue that's there just a little bit. Actually helps out. Okay, let's see. I think that's about it for me. I don't know that I want to do too much else. I've got the fish there. He really does look like he's coming off the page. I guess if I'm looking at this, the only thing I would do in retrospect is maybe I wouldn't use quite such a warm blue on the background. I don't think it comes out in the video, but it looks as though there's purple in the background, and I didn't really want the purple. I do like how we have this gentle shadow on the side of the fish. Maybe it's not really illuminated all that much, but just a little bit. It shows that he's not just floating in air. There's a little something down there that he's on. I'm going to sign this one right there. And let's see, beautiful. Thank you, Connie. I'm also trying to things on my own, see what I can do. You know what? Try some different things, take some chances, realize not every painting you're going to do is going to be a finished product. It's not all going to be ready for the studio or to sell or whatnot, and that's okay. That's part of the process. If you don't have some nights where you're just playing with your colors, where you're doing oddball things, then you're probably only doing the same thing. And while you're going to get good at that, you probably do need to expand. We all need to expand a little bit and move into some different things. So I would encourage you to take a night of the week or an hour from your studio time or half an hour of your studio time and just do some crazy things. You've seen somebody do some super wet paintings, wet paintings. Give it a shot, do it, and realize it's just a trial. It's not going to be anything. It's not indicative of what you do, but you might learn something from it. Oh, yeah, doodle nights. That's great. That's great practice. Okay, there we go. Anyways, here is my koi. Thank you all for stopping by. I'm going to end this a little early, 48 minutes. I think that's a new low for me. I guess I'm not done talking yet. So here it is, my koi fish. Thank you all for stopping by. Oh, good, Shirley. Thank you for the follow on Instagram. Like I said, there's a subscribe button down here somewhere. I think if you would subscribe if you like this, or give a like to the channel. Read through the show notes. I've got links to Twitter, Instagram. I don't know if Facebook is there. Ko-fi, Patreon, I think. I don't know. There's a lot of links down there. If my blog post is still there, ignore that. I'm going to take that away because I don't keep it up all that much. Anyways, that's it for me. Thank you all so much. We'll see you back here again really soon. Bye-bye.